Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, July 1st, 2025, and today we're going to answer the question, what would you grow for cooking if you couldn't eat alliums? That's right, no onion, no garlic. The horror? Maybe, but maybe not. We will discuss the perils of washing our hands, of greenwashing, and what to do with excess produce, so let's do it. All right, everyone, welcome to Tilth Tuesday. Every Tuesday of this year, we will be brought to you by our friends at Tilth Soil. If you're looking for compost or propagation mix, check out tilthsoil.com. Link in the show notes. I hope everyone is off to a reasonable start to your weeks and a reasonable July so far. It's only been a few hours. Look at us. We're cruising right through this year like a bunch of champs, aren't we? Just under 30 weeks to go until the new year, because that's a normal way to measure things, right? Anyway, hope it's off to a good start. So what I want to talk about first is I read this article last week about a very small soccer club in Vermont called Vermont Green FC, and I promise this is not really a soccer monologue as much as I would love it to be. No, in fact, the article was about the sort of environmentally friendly initiatives and identity that the club has taken on specifically, and I'm summarizing the article here from Kara Buckley and the New York Times. The players' jerseys are made of recycled fabric. Spectators who bike to the game are rewarded with raffle tickets. The food trucks offer vegan eats, and the announcer requests that the spectators take all of their trash and recycling and put them in the appropriate bins, including a compost bin. So effectively, although this is a club in a lower division of American soccer, they are doing things you do not necessarily see or hear often at sporting events. There is another club called Forest Green Rovers in England who already do many of the same things, but who also maintains an organic pitch. That's the field that soccer is played on, that captures rainwater and recycles it back for irrigation, saving precious tap water. They also have what they call an epic new process that cleans up the water from the away fans' toilets and pumps that back onto the pitch as well. Not sure why the away fans, not sure what they do with the home fans' wastewater, but that's what it says. They plant the borders with wildflower seed to help encourage the beneficials. In fact, they have plans to build an all-timber eco-park stadium that is slowly making its way to fruition after the design approval and building approvals have been taken care of. That seemingly has a whole field dedicated to pollinators. Unfortunately, this is also a club with not a ton of money or reach, playing in what's called the National League, the same league, if you watch the show Welcome to Wrexham, the same league that Wrexham was in before Ryan and Rob took over. 4 full tiers below the English Premier League. So not a lot of reach in this one. In other words, like it is so often, it's those that have the least who are doing the most. It may bring to mind things like greenwashing, how large companies and corporations will do like very tiny things to make them look like environmentally responsible without really doing anything that causes significant change. I like to look at it as proportionally what these small clubs are doing would affect actual environmental change at a large corporation, a large club, etc. So what's my point in talking about this? Beyond maybe giving you a few new teams to root for? Well, the reality of the world right now is that we are not doing basically anything sustainable, like almost nothing. Not in the way we live, not in the ways we get around, the stuff we buy or the activities we enjoy. And in order to achieve even a modicum of environmental sustainability, as I've said before on this podcast, we are going to have to begin integrating ecology, energy recapture, food and water recycling, and so on into basically every aspect of our lives. And that, frankly, does not have to be some massive inconvenience. It's just as easily an opportunity to show off our ingenuity and creativity. Riffing here, that would be like green roofs that help clean our air and water and reduce energy dependence while also providing some ecological habitat. Energy recapture initiatives, such as parts of roads that recapture energy of cars or stadiums that recapture the energy of stomping fans. I think that one would be pretty cool. Landscaping dedicated to ecology, just all the things. My thing is always that beyond rolling our eyes at the greenwashing of big corporations, people look at genuine environmental approaches like it's the same thing. And it's not really, right? It's a good model for what we could be doing. And they also look at these changes, I guess, as inconvenient or disruptive or expensive. But my question is always, are you sure they would be? Why can't they simply be exciting and full of creative potential and opportunity? And I know that the ultimate answer to that is that there is not enough money to be made in caring about the environment, and it's kind of become uncool or whatever to even discuss it, environmentalism. However, I don't know, call me crazy, but you know what is really uncool or bad for making money? A completely depleted planet with a population enfeebled by the air, water, and food it consumes. Just a thought. So let's go Rovers, let's go green. We'll be rooting for you and the example that you are trying to set there, small as it may be. Anyway, what say you all? Let me know, and we will discuss it on next Monday, because as you will remember, we are taking Friday off, so no Feedback Friday, Feedback Monday. It's not as alliterative, but it's just as fun. All right, we're going to hear from some of you all real quick, and then when we come back, what would you grow if you couldn't eat alliums? BRB.
Hello, I'm Seth, and Jill is behind the camera. We are in Silang, Cavite, Philippines, and it is our first season growing here, and is going better than expected.
I am Shawnee from Shawnee Grows here in Minnesota Zone 5A. Spring was hot all of a sudden and then cold, which upset all of our cold crops. We're having a high heat summer with rain daily. The perennials are doing well for what actually survived the lack of snow winter that we had, and we've had lots of wind this year.
Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. If you're listening to this, you probably found 5 rare minutes to breathe. But what got pushed back further down the to-do list to make that happen? If it's your CSA newsletter, you're not alone. Farmhand's new newsletter builder was made for busy farmers. It automates weekly emails, drives add-on sales, and makes it easy to keep your customers in the loop without spending hours behind a screen. It launches this summer, but our listeners can request early access now. Visit farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Casista, who writes, quote, "We have allium sensitivity in our house, so I sow extra bulb fennel starts to plug into gaps in the beds where you might transplant lettuce into gaps. I get the rest of the world loves garlic, and good for you, but some of us can't rely on the old standby. We're in zone 6A, so leaf fennel doesn't like us all that much except for high summer. The plot thickens. There is more flavor available once you drop garlic. We use aromatics like fennel, dill, carrot tops, fresh celery, cinnamon, not growing that anytime soon, they note, nasturtium, basil, fresh oregano, and weaker alliums like standard chives and Japanese winter bunching onions. No cannabacea, no cilantro. Our kitchen has limitations, so I'm always looking around. Any comments you have on fennel and other underappreciated aromatics in the homesteader gardens? Other alternatives to garlic that might work well fresh, but not at the grocer? What's your favorite underappreciated culinary or aromatic? Thanks." End quote. Okay, Casista, very fun stuff here and very challenging question. Love this. I mean, I love garlic and cannot imagine a world without alliums, or at least the main alliums. But for you, I will do precisely that because, as you said, there is an allium sensitivity in your house, so it's somewhat of a necessity. And as hard as I think it would be to adjust to that, I like this challenge and would have fun with it. Also, we usually run out of worthwhile garlic by February, so I feel like I at least have some experience with this. First, I should say that I think fennel is a great choice. I'm a huge fennel fan, and even reading this made me crave some. I have always had some affection for anise flavors in general. I was the odd child who actively chose the good and plenties when I could have any type of candy I wanted, and I'm okay with the ridicule I expect from that. And fennel is not only great raw, like raw, thinly sliced fennel in salads, but also roasted, grilled, all sorts of stuff. The fronds also make a great herb. The seeds are quite tasty too, and I will often mix them in with roasted potatoes as I cook it. It's really just a versatile and underappreciated crop that can grow in a fairly wide range of conditions. Take a little cold and a little bit of the heat. I think the other thing that comes to mind that can impart a lot of unique flavor in the kitchen is just herbs in general. I mean, you mentioned some of them obviously, but one I love that we often tend to think of as kind of a boring, ubiquitous garnish, but that's parsley. And it in particular does not get enough credit for how much flavor and freshness it adds to a dish. While in season, which parsley has a huge season, I love almost nothing more than chopping up some parsley and basil and maybe some dill, although for me it would also include cilantro, but I'm trying to follow your rules here. All together, really fine, and adding that over everything from pasta to rice dishes and beyond. Carrot leaves and wood sorrel can be thrown in there as well. Almost anything savory can use some fresh herbs like that. Other herbs like rosemary and thyme and sage that are more, I don't know, like your cooking herbs rather than your like raw fresh herbs are also amazing for adding flavor and nutrition to a dish. I make rosemary sweet potato gratin every Thanksgiving. It does have garlic in it, but I make it every Thanksgiving, and that has to be one of my favorite things on the planet. Also peppers, and specifically hot peppers. If you don't like the spice, if that's not your thing, but are good with pepper flavor, the habanada pepper is a fun one that we've grown in the past. You kind of get that hot pepper flavor, in particular the fruity habanero, without that kick. But if you do like a little spice, the sky's the limit. The hot peppers come in a whole range of flavors and can really liven up a meal. I will often, in fact, chop up like a jalapeno or one of our little popper peppers that we've bred, and add that to something, basically any warm and savory dish, with a small pat of butter. The fat of the butter really draws the heat out and the flavor. Also flours. There are several good edible flours to add a little something extra to a meal, such as nasturtiums, which you mentioned, that give it that little radish vibe, and also squash blossoms, which are kind of richer and pretty fun to stuff. Not as much flavor, but really nice texture. It adds a little meatiness. Marigolds are a fun one, used very lightly in a salad. I also love me some borage, and for whatever reason, our littlest one will just sit there and eat borage flowers. They have kind of like a little bit of that cucumber thing going on, which is nice and refreshing. Speaking of that, cucamelons, the tiny little cucurbits that create what look like little, micromelons, those are so full of flavor and fun to eat right off the vine. Similar to hot peppers, I suppose, lots of flavor comes in small packages. Cherry tomatoes and paste tomatoes, for instance, are similar in that way. Loads of flavor, small container. Seeds, too. Seeds pack a huge punch of flavor. Fennel seeds and dill seeds. There are certainly some other good ones out there, too. We can't grow citrus, really, which is frustrating, but like I mentioned earlier, wildwood sorrel, but also purslane. Those are two that add this nice little tanginess. They can help bring out some of the citrus vibe. Vitamin C, that is, to a dish. Okra, too. I feel like okra is kind of underrated for the flavor it imparts on a dish. It has this kind of like meatiness to it that just, beyond the mucilaginous element, it does add this nice kind of meatiness to a dish in terms of flavor. Lots of great stuff in the foraging department, too, just kind of getting back to that purslane and wood sorrel thing. I don't want to get into too many of those because some of them have caveats, like I like pokeweed, but you can only eat pokeweed at certain stages. So I don't want to recommend any of those. You'll have to figure out what's local to you and what makes sense, and then make sure that you've identified it correctly and you're using it correctly. But there's lots of good stuff out there in the woods that a lot of times is very intensely flavored and great for adding to dishes, salads, all that stuff. I will be curious to hear what others might add to this list. I'm sure I'm overlooking something that brings a little extra something to a dish in the way that garlic or alliums or cilantro do, but without being one of those crops. Let us know. And up next, we will take a quick break. And then when we return, we'll talk about what to do when the garden gets just a little too abundant. Be right back.
Hi, my name is Sam Kosak. I'm from Gainesville, Florida, Zone 9B, and my gardening season has been pretty awesome so far. I have never gardened somewhere with full sun before. This is my first season, and it's pretty cool.
All right, so no matter if you're market gardening or just growing your own, summer 'tis the time of abundance for many of us. Maybe it's abundance of one particular crop, such as yellow squash or soon tomatoes. And rather than letting that thing go to waste, which is not the term I prefer, because nothing is ever really wasted on a farm that composts, but rather than letting food go uneaten, what can be done? Well, finding new outlets for excess produce can be challenging, but there are a few ways to manage it. One, it can be built into the business model that some weeks the restaurants, for instance, aren't buying what you had thought they would, or the amount that you had expected them to buy, or what they had in the same quantities as previous years. So having a market or a CSA where that excess produce can be distributed might be a part of the plan. Because sometimes it isn't just on you that you have an excess of something. Sometimes it's just the market has changed. New players have entered, restaurants have shifted menus, all sorts of things can happen in the business world. And then, of course, sometimes it is on you. You got inspired in March to plant another 200 pepper plants, assuming you can find a market by the time they're ready. And then in July, you're like, well, no, I'm the pepper king. So what then? Well, hopefully you did at least try to find markets leading up to their harvest, but I learned the hard way that hopeful planting like that almost never works because finding the time and energy to break into wholesale markets or whatever can be tough in the middle of the season. Tough, but not impossible, but certainly you don't have a lot of extra time. Building up your markets is something you can do. It just takes dedicating some energy and time to it and going to retailers and restaurants and maybe even in the case of peppers, hot sauce producers and seeing if they need bulk peppers. Again, not easy to do in the middle of the season. Then, of course, if you can't find an outlet, you could theoretically process the excess item for yourself or pay someone to process them for you in a commercial kitchen for sale at fall and winter markets, that sort of stuff. People are often looking for local gifts to give to people around the Christmas season. So maybe that's an opportunity to turn whatever products you have in excess into something you could sell this winter. It'd be like your own peck of pickled peppers. as it were. Naturally, you also have the option of processing them in your own kitchen for your own storage, but sometimes you may just have more than any human family can reasonably eat. So additionally, taking that produce to a food bank or calling a gleaning organization to help you manage it might be an option worth adding to the list. We have a gleaning organization here in Kentucky. I think it's just called Glean Kentucky, and they tend to be more abundant, these gleaning organizations, than you might think, and you can perhaps find one near you at the nationalgleaningproject.org site. Which we will link in the show notes if you're curious about that. Composting or mowing down a crop should probably be the last resort for most crops, only because it can be such a waste. At the same time, if that crop is costing you money and making it difficult to produce something that perhaps you want or your market wants or whatever, and that you know you can sell, then I think terminating it early does not have to be out of the cards. In that situation, it's just an expensive, labor-intensive cover crop. And composting, as much of a waste as that feels like, is also turning that food into more food. So yeah, waste isn't quite the right word there. Though again, if you can feed someone else, that should be the priority, especially with more shelf-stable crops that don't really require intensive cutting or washing, like our pepper example, as opposed to, I don't know, something like lettuce that may take a lot of work to harvest it and wash it and pack it and all those things. Moreover, if you're really needing an additional economic incentive to help you make what can be a difficult decision for your business, donations to nonprofits are write-offs. So there's that. Obviously, don't go through this experience and not learn anything. Take notes for next year's garden plan so that it doesn't happen again, or so that you have a good plan for when it does happen. Why did you have too much? Did you plant too much? Did the market shift? And what is your plan for dealing with that? Note those things so that next year, when you're putting your garden plan together, you will be mindful of planting so much of X crop. Or maybe donating a bunch of food felt satisfying to you as it has for us, and growing excess becomes a part of your garden plan. That works too. Also, make a plan to meet some outlets over the winter. Food banks, chefs, retailers, whatever. Just make contact. Anyone who might take the excess or purchase it. Whatever the case, at least take from this experience that having an abundance of something means that, hey, maybe the plan didn't work out, but you did rule at growing that one thing, so congrats to you, Pepper King. You've found a niche that, with enough time and experience and work, you could make into a substantial part of your business. Anyway, nothing groundbreaking in there, I don't think, though to be fair, this is a no-till channel, so groundbreaking. But perhaps something sparked an idea or thought for you that could be helpful. Otherwise, that's it for this July 1st. See you later, June. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations, while they're tax deductible and greatly appreciated, you can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers for their support. Also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of July, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Kyle Richardville, Patrick Weaver, Alex and Oliver, Bill King, and Chris Yates. All right, so our heroine is standing in front of the charred bed of flowers in her garden, scratching her head as to why anyone would burn this particular flower of all flowers. In fact, it's not even a flower she likes to grow very much because it's not very pretty. She can't really sell it as a cut flower, and almost none of the wizards or witches really buy it with that much amount of regularity. She just grows it because occasionally somebody comes in and wants a lot of it. A member of the lettuce family, it was mostly just used like as a sleep aid, as was her understanding, by the wizards and witches and whatnot. So why would anyone care enough to burn it all down? And then she noticed something. There were a few plants that hadn't been burned at the very end of that bed, but they had been harvested. Did they harvest the whole crop and then burn it? Why would anyone do that? Then she saw the footprints in the muddy trail leading into the forest and decided to follow. That is for tomorrow on Snoozeville. It's probably not the best name of a story, but we're going to roll with it. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you then.